Hey budget gardeners, Vita Loca here. Join me today in my plant nursery as we go shopping for some dwarf ladies mantle. So let's go. This is my second year with this plant nursery, and although most of the plants in here are for sale, I do use this nursery as a holding bed for plants that I acquire or that I've divided from my own landscape but I want to use somewhere else in my yard. A number of years ago, I bought a dwarf ladies mantle from my friend Linda, who also has a backyard plant nursery. And since I didn't know what I wanted to do with it at the time, I just placed it down here. And over the last few years, I've looked at it, I've dug it up, I've divided it, potted it back up into a number of pots, and kept it in my plant nursery. And one question that's come up recently is, with these plants, do they overwinter? They do, because all the plants in here, even though they're in small pots, are healed into the ground, so their roots are fully protected during our cold winter months. Anyway, today's the day. I want to get those dwarf ladies mantle. I want to show you how many I have, and we're going to put them around my little pond that I have in my front yard. Well, I was able to collect 13 plants. There may be more in each pot, but I remember when I got this plant, it was literally one, maybe two plants. That's the name of the game, is keep dividing your plants and you'll end up with more. And one thing I'll end up having to do is just pull out some random weeds that, have come into these pots over time. But other than that, these plants look great. And that noise you hear, well, there's my pond. And, around the pond, it is pretty jam-packed with plants. So I surveyed what plants I had around the pond, and I looked at some plants that actually didn't look great. Most of them look very good. And this hosta that's right here looks a little washed out. I have that same hosta in my backyard, and it looks very pretty over there. I tried it. I wanted to see how it would look here. But if you look at it carefully, you can see that I think it's just a little too sunny out in this location. And since I have my heart set on planting the dwarf ladies mantle around this pond, something's got to go. So we're going to start with digging out all of those hosta that were placed in here earlier this year. I'll find another place for them in my yard. I think that's the name of the game when it comes to gardening, is experimenting and trying different plants in different locations and testing them out. And if you don't like the way it looks, or if the plant is not doing as well as it really should be, then you move the plant. And when you remove a plant, that gives opportunity for other plants. This hosta is actually, I would say, one of my favorite. I really like it. And I have it in my backyard, which is the east side of my house. And this hosta does really well in that location. This pond is located on the west side of my house. And I do have a whole bunch of other hosta around here that are doing fine. I originally thought about removing this hosta right here because I felt like it wasn't mini enough for around my pond, but I'm actually very happy with it. I think it looks very good there, and I'd much rather remove more of this kind of hosta. In the camera, it might not show that the leaves are washed out, but I'm not happy with the look of them. They look much better on the other side of my house. So I'm going to keep removing this hosta. I have it in a number of places around the pond, and then we're going to plant the dwarf or miniature ladies mantle. Well, I ended up with 13 plants, so that's pretty exciting. And again, these will go to a good home elsewhere in my yard. And now for this beautiful little petite ladies mantle. I'm very excited that I found a home for it. I wasn't sure where to put them because the thing is, they're tiny, they're very small. You can see next to my hand. And I don't want them to get lost in the landscape. I do have the larger variety of ladies mantle, which you will often see at garden centers. This one here, I've never seen it. It's actually, even if I look on the internet, I don't find a lot of information about it. So I'm so happy to have it, and I have plenty of it, and it's going to look so cute around this pond. Normally, I would deadhead the dwarf ladies mantle, but honestly, I'm going to leave the flowers on there that are going by because I want to see if I can collect the seeds off of it. I know that some of the mini hosta around the pond also need to be thinned out. because I've had them here for a number of years, so they're overdue. But my goal for right now is just to get these little guys put into the ground where they'll be much happier. This location gets some sun and some shade, and that's a perfect area for these mini ladies mantle. The key is they need a lot of water, and I do have drip irrigation set up in here, so they'll be happy. When it comes to planting them, I'm just making sure that the roots are under the soil level, but this part right here, that's called the crown of the plant, you don't want to plant any plant, including this one, too deep. You want to make sure that the crown of the plant is above soil level. And I'm putting these in pretty heavily. I think they'll make more of an impact that way rather than just put one here and one there. I commonly refer to this plant as a dwarf lady's mantle, but it does have another name. So I'll be sure to put that name on the screen in case you want to read about this plant a little bit more. In terms of placement, I think it's going to look great around this pond, which is up along my walkway. But also, this would look wonderful along a rock garden if you have a small rock garden. It also would make a nice ground cover under like a small tree or shrub. And I think it would look really sweet in something like a pot, like a fairy garden or just a small container pot. Once again, I'm going to leave the flowers on here, even if it makes the plant look a little bit ratty, because I do want to collect the seeds off the seed pods. Just like the larger size lady's mantle, this lady's mantle will also have nice little water droplets on it after a rainfall, which makes the plant look really beautiful. And that's a bonus. In this pot, I ended up with a larger plant as well as a smaller plant. Now, I'm not sure where you can buy this plant. Like I said, I really have not seen it in a lot of garden centers, and I got very lucky finding it at a backyard plant nursery, which I'm thrilled about. I'm just removing some of the bottom leaves that don't look so good. I really enjoy having a backyard plant nursery because I can then offer plants like this one in the future that are hard to find. And I think that's one of the reasons why I enjoy shopping at backyard plant nurseries. I like to shop local, but also you can sometimes find some unique and different plants. Another little tiny baby plant, I'm just going to tuck it in here. Doesn't that look pretty? It will fill in over time, so I'm giving it plenty of room to breathe. And once I mulch this area, if I get to it this year, that will really make that plant pop. My goal for this plant was to get this plant out of the plant nursery and find a good home for it. And I know I've found a really good home for it. And for today, I'm just not going to worry about the fact that I want to have more room for this plant around the pond, because that's a whole other project. Dividing some of the mini hosta and making more room around the pond. I can definitely do that a different day. I'm just happy to get these little guys around my pond. I'm going to finish up with planting the lady's mantle around the pond. I'll show you what everything looks like when it's done. Okay, I got them planted. I am so excited. Any plant that's been in a pot for a number of years is better off in the ground. And I am definitely happy with having these little tiny plants around my pond. And I just want to show you again, my pond really is packed with, I think, too many plants, but that happens over time. But for this year, you know, we are going through a heat wave. It's been really, really hot. It's not the best time for me to be moving a ton of the plants around. Plus, I have other projects I need to complete. So I want to keep the scope of this project to exactly what I wanted to do today, which was to get those dwarf ladies mantle in the ground and remove the hosta that just weren't thriving in this location. I just want to show you close up some of the plants that are in here. We have wax begonias that I started from seed. And then see this bluish green color hosta. It's gotten pretty large for this area. I mean, it looks beautiful. It's filled right in. But my goal eventually with these plants around the pond is to leave a little bit more breathing room, just so that I can add mulch in here. And I think plants will stand out better if they're not so jam-packed. But there is a small grouping of the dwarf lady's mantle, looking beautiful, and that will fill right in. And as we move this way, we have another grouping of the dwarf lady's mantle. looking very sweet. You can see over time, I have divided these hosta and moved them around. I really only started with one or two small plugs and just kept dividing and moving them around. Right there is a beautiful little grouping of the plant. I think I packed like 5 plants in there. That's just a different angle of the pond. And this is the front of my house, my front porch. All right, in case you're wondering what about those poor hosta that we dug up, let's go to my backyard and I want to show you where I have that same hosta and show you the difference in the leaves and what they look like back there. And let's get these guys planted. Okay, we are on the other side of my house where it's definitely shadier. And right towards the front of some of these bluish colored hosta are those other hosta that we just dug up. And I think they look very pretty here, but I've had it in my heart that I think I'd like to move them towards the front of these plants here, just to give that light green color contrast with the darker green colored leaves here. And I'll be doing that project on a different day, but I want to take you in for a closer look so you can see the color of these leaves versus those. So I'm not sure how well you're going to be able to see the difference in color. This, to me at least, looks more washed out, and these look a little more vibrant. I like that look better, but I really think it's a personal preference. Some people might like this look on the leaf, but I would prefer to have this plant in this area of my yard because I like the look of this leaf. So we're going to get some of these planted. And I think the hosta will look really pretty dotted amongst here in front of some of the tiarella as well as some of the heuchera. And it might even look pretty in front of some of the pulmonaria. We'll see how far we get with how much we have here. I'm just removing the mulch before I plant this. One thing I've learned about this variety of hosta, which I don't know the name because I got this from my mother-in-law's yard a number of years ago, is that this variety definitely grows a little bit faster than some of my other hosta, which is definitely a bonus. This flower bed has irrigation set to it, which is why I'm not adding water into the planting hole because it's plenty wet. And over time, this is really going to fill in this area, which is why I'm only doing one piece at a time. Okay, so that's the one we just planted. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep planting these small hosta towards the front of this bed. And I'll take you in for a closer look just to show you what it looks like when I'm all done. Okay, the hosta have been planted. I'm going to take you in for a closer look so you can see where I placed them. You know, there's the rule that you're supposed to plant in odd numbers, starting with like groups of 3 and 5. Well, you don't always have to follow that rule. I had just enough to, fill in this area, and I'm happy with that. Because if I had followed that rule, I wouldn't have had enough to fill in this area the way that I did. And, there's one over there, there's one here, there's one tucked in here. You can see the other one right there. And eventually my goal is to fill in these gaps with more of this kind of hosta. Because honestly, you can't even see the same type of hosta in there. It's really tucked under there. So on a different day, I will definitely come back and I will dig those out and I will move them towards the front because I think that color will contrast very nicely. There's a lot of green happening in here, and I think having a lighter color green will look nice. Now, I realize it won't be this light, it will be that light, but that still looks very pretty when contrasted with, the different plants that are here. So you can see where I dotted them in here. There was some bloodroot that I bumped into, so I'll have to be mindful of that. Bloodroot is an ephemeral plant, so it has died back, but I did find the roots as I was digging. Put some over here, here, and then I ended it with right over here. But I'm really enjoying this little woodland garden area of my yard, which honestly much of my yard is woodland garden like. But I am trying to focus on working on small areas at a time, and I'm very pleased with how this area is coming out. I am so happy to get the dwarf lady's mantle out of my plant nursery and planted somewhere in my landscape where I'm really going to enjoy it. And I know probably next year I will enjoy it even more when I've cleaned around my pond so that that plant can really stand out. But I know it's found a very good home because of its size, and now it can keep growing, get bigger, and then I can move it to other areas of my yard. For example, I have some rock gardens in my yard, and I think that that plant would look perfect in the rock garden areas. But I'm going to have to wait until these plants propagate and grow over time. And if I can collect the seeds off of them, that would be a bonus. And the hosta, well, I tried it. It wasn't doing great here, and that's okay. It's going to do lovely in that area that we just planted it in. And I have a lot more of that hosta out in that bed. So over time, we can really make an impact towards the front of that bed with that particular hosta. I hope you enjoyed this content. I'll be making lots more videos just like this one. If you liked it, please consider hitting the like button, subscribing to my channel, and don't forget to hit the notification bell. As always, I welcome any questions or comments that you might have, and until the next video, make it a great day with gardening.